Hello everyone, welcome to week 5 of the ECE9013 course. In this lecture, we are going to discuss tuples, lists, and some of the operations possible on each. Last time, we discussed the idea of functions and how to define functions in Python. We also discussed how the concepts of decomposition and abstraction are implemented with functions. Note that the projects and assignments will be based on functions and object-oriented programming. In this week's lecture, we will be presenting two compound data types, mainly tuples and lists, and we will also cover the concepts of aliasing, mutability, and cloning. Starting off with tuples. What is a tuple? A tuple is an ordered sequence of elements that we can actually mix the element types in. So for example, here we can see we have an integer and a string as part of one tuple. Note that to be able to define a tuple, we define it or represent it with a parenthesis. Another important factor to consider or bear in mind is the fact that we cannot change element values of a tuple, which means that tuples are immutable. So here, for example, we initially define T as an anti-tuple. Then we define T again as a series of 3 elements, 2 of which are integers and 1 that is a string. If we try to access the tuple at index 0, which means at the first element we get the value of 2, we can actually concatenate tuples. So if we do this operation, this is the output. We can slice a tuple, that is, extract part of it. We can calculate the length or determine the length of the tuple. However, note here, for example, if we try to assign a new value of an element within the tuple, we get an error. And this is because, as we mentioned earlier, tuples are immutable. That is, you cannot change the element values. So when are tuples commonly used? They are conveniently used to swap variable values. So for example, if we have 2 variables x and y and we want them to exchange values, this operation would not work, because in this case we would assign the value of y into x, but the old value of x is lost. That's why one way to do it is to store the value of x in a temporary variable, then assign the value of y to x, and then assign the value of temp to y. Another more concise manner is using tuples. So in this case, we are assigning the old values of y and x to be the new values of x and y. Another important use of tuples is when we want to return more than one value from a function. So as an example, imagine we are defining a function called quotient and remainder that gives us the quotient and remainder of the division between 2 numbers x and y. So here the quotient is the integer division between x and y, and the remainder is the modulo of x and y. And then we return q and r. So in this case, the output of this function is a tuple. Another important concept is the fact that we can actually define a tuple of tuples. So Similar to nested loops, we can have nested tuples. In this example, we can see that a tuple can be defined as a series of smaller tuples, each of which that is composed of one integer and one string value. So here nums is an empty tuple and words is an empty tuple. Now we are iterating over the values within the a tuple. So here we are concatenating the value that we are reading at t equal to at the first index, so it reads the first tuple, and we are stating that if t at 1, which is this value, is not in words, we add it to words. So this function basically counts the number of times that a word, unique words exist within the tuple, and what is the smallest integer and largest integer. Thank you.